Hello, and welcome to part 8 of our multi-part effort at recording me reading from my novel Menace in the Goldilocks Zone. As you may recall, if you've been following along, Roger and the Captain Forgedam have just made the acquaintance with some of the Iridian Deep Space Patrol, and are just leaving, had just left their cruiser. And so I will read the last few paragraphs of chapter 7 as kind of an introduction to where we are in chapter 8. They arrive at the first antechamber, and Slither reminds them they are about to return to zero gravity. Slither accompanies them all the way to the airlock door. She comes to attention, crest raised, and salutes the two. "Captain, Admiral, I am ever in your debt." "Nonsense, Commander. On Cerulia we have the code of the sea. One is obliged to come to the aid of a skiff in distress. Is that not the case in space?" Roger turns to Forgedam and repeats his question. "Among civilized people, yes," Forgedam replies. "I quite concur with the captain," Slither agrees after Roger translates her remarks. "Yet, even among civilized people, such obligations are ignored when they become inconvenient. A safe journey to you both." "And to you, Commander," Roger says as the airlock door closes. So now we begin. Chapter 8, Menace of the Goldilocks, in the Goldilocks Zone. Chapter 8, Seas of Grass. "Good watch, Admiral." Roger turns in his tether to see Gatherdam moving along the grips. "Good watch to you, Gatherdam. What's that you're working on?" "Death of a raider." Roger turns the canvas to show her. "Very dramatic, sir." "Thank you. See you at the next change of watch?" Yes, of course." "It's the last change before we land on Mara Urba." "Yes, at long last, eh, Gatherdam?" "Yes, sir. It will be good to be home." "I imagine it would be," Roger muses. "I imagine it would be." It is Roger's 10th consecutive day of floating in the tether, the visit to the Iridian cruiser exacerbating his claustrophobia rather than temporarily relieving it. While Mara Urba is not home, he nonetheless looks forward to a return to gravity and an open sky. Forgedam is all business at the next change of watch, reminding the crew of all that is to be done before entering the atmosphere and landing. Roger decides to sequester himself in his cabin, lights out, and strapped to his platform, both to stay out of the way and to quiet his increasingly restless anticipation. Naurdam eventually appears in his cabin doorway. "Yes, Naurdam?" Roger asks, forgetting he had removed his communication device. When she hesitates in the doorway, head cocked, he realizes the problem and dons the device. "What can I do for you?" he asks the third officer again. "I've come to make a final safety check of your cabin, sir. We are landing shortly." Of course. Come in." Roger waves her in and returns to his platform. "All in order," she assures him. "Strap yourself in, sir. It will get bumpy." "Yes, I will. Thank you." "See you on Mara Urba, sir." "Yes," Roger says. At last. The sensations of landing seem to be the opposite of takeoff. Instead of being pressed into the platform, his body seems to rise against the straps as the vessel shudders through the atmosphere. As before, there is a sudden cessation of vibration and a jolt, and his body is then pressed back onto the platform. Roger is hastily removing the straps and about to climb out of bed when Naurdam reappears in his doorway. "We have landed, sir. Mind the..." She watches Roger tumble unceremoniously to the floor. "Gravity. Are you all right, sir?" Yes, Roger assures her as he rights himself. "Thank you, Naurdam. Is it me? Or is everything heavier?" "Well, sir, we have been in zero-G for some time," Naurdam points out. "But Mare Urba is a larger planet than Cerulia. That makes the gravity stronger, I'm told. You'll get used to it with time." "I hope so. If walking is as tiring as just picking myself up like this, I'll be flushing my guild chamber 6 times a day." Not knowing what to say to that, Naurdam asks, "Do you need assistance?" No, thank you." I'm sure you have other duties to attend to. I'll be fine. I just need, as you say, some time. Very well, sir. Now her dam disappears. Roger moves to follow her, struggling against unseen straps that seem determined to pin his legs and body to the floor. He moves slowly down the hold toward daylight streaming through the aft cargo door. His progress is painfully slow, like a nightmare in which his limbs are stuck in invisible mud. Anxious to see the sun and sky, he is grimly determined and does not see the tall figure waiting at the cargo door until he is almost there. Take it easy, my friend, the notice on his goggles read. Gravity is tireless. You are not. Roger looks in the direction the goggles' arrows indicate and sees a silhouette backlit by bright sunshine. He at first thinks that Slither, or possibly Gape, was meeting him there, but as he approached, the figure stepped into the shadow of the hold. Peregrine! Roger greets the figure, joy instilling his limbs with more strength. How good it is to see you. And to see you, my dear. I understand you had quite the journey. Yes, a bit more excitement than any of us bargained for. Still, we made it. I hope we are not too late. Your message seemed quite urgent. Yes, I'm sorry for the short notice. As for being late, it could not be helped. Suffice to say that for now the disaster I fear has not yet struck. But we will speak of that later. Come behold the sun and sky. I'm sure you miss them. I have indeed. The two walk out the cargo door and down the ramp. Roger feels the sun on his mantle. But it is not as warm here. Indeed, the sun seems pale and wan compared to home. The sky, too, is a grayer blue, and the air feels cooler on his mantle. I can tell I am farther from the sun, he remarks after a moment. Yes, Peregrine replies. And you are at a more northern latitude and higher elevation. Roger accompanies Peregrine away from the vessel. They are evidently on a plateau overlooking what Roger at first takes to be a green sea. Waves undulate under a stiff wind and turn from a pale green to gray as they pass underneath them. It is only when Roger spots the silver ribbon of a river in the distance does he realize he is looking out over a vast plain extending west as far as he can see. He feels the wind at his back, gusting but relentless. I wish I brought my skiff, he says aloud. It looks like I could sail over those grasslands. You would not get far, Peregrine says, chuckling at the fancy. That grass is 2 meters high and very thick. They turn away from the plain, and Roger sees that the plateau is dwarfed by a snow-capped mountain range running north and south. Deeper green vegetation covers their slopes up to some invisible line or barrier. Above that, he can only see rock or snow. Come, Peregrine says. I want to introduce you to our hosts. She pauses a moment. You brought a great deal of nectar gel, I trust. Yes, plenty. Good. That will help warm your welcome. The couple here are friends of Captain Forgedam, but they have not yet encountered off-worlders before. They are civil enough, but still skittish around me. I expect they will be more than a little startled to meet a cerulean. Peregrine leads them to what appears at first to be a mound of soil, but as they walk around it, Roger sees that it is an entrance to a burrow, a well-lit and well-appointed burrow, but a burrow all the same. Hello, Peregrine calls into the burrow. Gray Whiskers, Silver Ears, are you home? A Mare Urban appears in the burrow entrance, nose and whiskers twitching. Upon seeing the two of them, the creature takes a small step back, but appears to muster its courage and steps out, rising to stand on its hind legs. Gray Whiskers Burrowson, this is my friend from Cerulia I was telling you about, Roger. Roger Gray Whiskers. Hello, Roger says. It's very nice to meet you. Great strikes teeth, Gray Whiskers says, obviously startled. The creature talks. Yes, Roger says patiently. Thanks to this marvelous device I'm wearing. He turns to Peregrine, for which I never properly thanked you, by the way. Peregrine makes one of her eloquent gestures indicating no thanks were necessary. Roger will set up a shelter near mine, she says to the Mare Urban. And he has brought his own food. All he will require is fresh water. The Mayor Urban appears to be somewhat relieved by this intelligence and acknowledges the information with a nod. Burrowson, Roger notes. That's the first officer's name. Are you related? We're cousins, Grey Whiskers replies. The explanation of cousin appearing on Roger's goggles is even longer than that for brother or sister. I see, Roger says, even though, not having bothered to read the explanation, he doesn't. Thank you, Grey Whiskers, Peregrine says after an awkward pause. She leads Roger away from the burrow to a cleared area partially occupied by her portable shelter and some shipping containers. I thought you could set up your shelter here, she says, indicating a space across the clearing from her shelter. And these appear to be your belongings. Yes, Roger says, looking at the containers. Oh, thank you, too, for the device to flush my guilt chambers. Very ingenious. I don't know what I would have done without it. You wouldn't have been able to come, Peregrine observes simply. Yes, that's true, Roger acknowledges. Still, it would be nice to put my Gilwicks in an ocean. Is there an ocean on Mare Urba? Yes, but it's many thousands of kilometers away. Oh, Roger swallows his disappointment. Well, as I say, the device works marvelously well. Peregrine helps Roger set up his shelter and unpack some amenities. How long will we be staying here? Roger asks as he gratefully extends his Gilwicks into the flushing device. My original plan was to stay for 20 days to allow you to get your strength back and to be sure my fuel synthesizer would work, Peregrine answers. But we'll have to abbreviate that considerably. I've arranged with the Burrowsons to have fuel shipped in. I suggest you rest now, but get out to walk as much as you can to get your strength back. As you have learned, space travel saps your strength, and we are in for an even longer journey to Arborea. It is still midday by the look of it, Roger observes. Too early to sleep. Perhaps I will paint until sunset. As you wish, Peregrine turns to leave and stops. And Roger? Yes? Don't go out into the grasslands without coming to see me first. Ah, yes. The strikes. Yes, Peregrine confirms. The strikes. Roger gets out his paints, but dithers over starting. The view of the sky is welcome, but so strange as to overwhelm his vocabulary. The grasslands, too, so much like the sea, yet not the sea. Those images and the looming catastrophe alluded to by Peregrine all combine to set his mind roiling, unable to formulate a composition. He gives up after a fruitless hour of staring at the blank canvas. He recalls Peregrine's remark about nectar gel warming his welcome. He decides to act on the suggestion. He stands at the burrow's entrance and calls, Mr. Burrowson, Grey Whiskers. He paused to wait, realizing distractedly as he did so that Mr. Burrowson's whiskers weren't gray. He spies some movement, and as before sees a different set of quivering nose and whiskers tentatively emerging from the burrow. Hello, he says brightly. I'm Roger, Peregrine's friend. Gray, the strange Mayor Urban calls back into the burrow. Gray, it's one of them. The nose and whiskers disappeared to be replaced by the more familiar appearance of G.W. Burrowson. Yes, are you in need of that water now? Oh, no, sir. I hope I haven't disturbed you overly much, Roger says hastily. But I wanted to give you this gift. He proffers a small box. As thanks for your hospitality, it's nectar gel from my farm. Gray looks at the box and back at Roger. Nectar gel? Is that box full? He takes the box to look for himself. Great floods and tunnel collapse. He turns back down the burrow. Sill! Come look at this! He disappears down the burrow, but reappears abruptly. I'm sorry, Mr. Roger, I forget me manners. Won't you come down? Roger would rather not, but he remembers his manners. Yes, thank you, Mr. Burrowson. He follows his host down a well-lit passageway whose walls are lined with thick stalks of a kind of grass. The passage leads to a similarly paneled, wide room with a low ceiling just high enough for Roger to remain upright. The other Mayor Urban is obviously startled to see him there. Sill, Burrowson says to her, this is Mr. Roger. He's Peregrine's friend, and he brought us this. He shows her the open box of nectar gel. Sill tears her eyes away from Roger reluctantly, but they protrude even more, and her ears stand up straight up when she sees the box. Good gracious, she exclaims. That's a ransom of nectar gel, or I'm a kit. You say this is from your farm, Mr. Roger? Gray asks. Yes, my farm on Cerulia. So you're a farmer then? It was a statement, not a question. We're farmers too. Oh? Roger asked politely. What do you grow? Fungus root, Gray says simply. Come this way and I'll show you. He moves down another passageway off the large room. Roger follows and Syl takes up the rear. I'm Silver Ear's burrow dam, by the way, Syl says as they arrive in another, darker chamber. Oh yeah, sorry, Gray says, turning on some lights. She's me mate. A pleasure, madam, Roger says pleasantly. The lights reveal another large room with long troughs filled with what looks like dark earth. So the fungus grows in these troughs? Roger asks. Yes, we have 100 troughs like these, Gray reports. And we gather wild seed, Syl adds proudly. My, that is impressive, Roger says politely. How goes the harvest? Oh, we'll get enough to keep our bellies full, Gray replies. That's interesting, Roger observes. That's pretty much what we say in Cerulia. Farmers are the same everywhere, eh, Mr. Roger? Syl asks. Indeed, madam, indeed. Gray turns off the lights and they return to the main room. You say you gather wild seed, Roger repeats as they arrive in the room. Is that grass seed? Yes, sir, Syl confirms. There's those in the bigger burrows that think the cultivated stuff is unhealthy. Gray and I don't know about that, she says, looking to her mate, but we do know they pay dearly for the wild seed. I see, Roger says. But what about the strikes? Aren't you afraid of them? You've heard about those, have you? Gray says. Of course we are. You'd be daft not to be. We know the times to gather when the strikes aren't moving about much. Oh, when is that? Mornings, evenings, when it's cool, Syl explains. Good to know, Roger says. Thank you. And there are more near the river, Gray adds. Of course, there's more seed near the river as well, he observes wryly. Well, I'm sure it's getting late, Roger says after a brief pause. Thank you for your tour. It was fascinating. Thank you, sir, for the gel, Gray says. I'll have that water for you before nightfall. More than soon enough, Roger assures them. Until tomorrow, then. Instead of returning directly to his shelter, Roger returns to the edge of the plateau where he and Peregrine had first looked out over the grasslands. The sun is setting, casting an earthy orange hue over the waving fronds of grass and turning the once silver river into gold. The vista is beautiful, but lacking in the intensity of color characteristic of sunsets at home. Standing there, watching the red disk of the sun disappear beneath the endless expanse of grass, he wonders to himself how he could ever have considered sunsets on water to be ordinary. Roger is up with the sun and is momentarily disoriented at finding himself in the fabric shelter, not strapped into a platform or a home on his island. The events of the previous day come back to him slowly, as does the nightmare sensation of being in an invisible quagmire. He emerges from his shelter deliberately and positions himself with relief over the gill-flushing chamber. It is the reassuring vibrations from the machine that remind Roger that he has not put on his communications device. Indeed, Peregrine emerges from her shelter, mouthing a greeting when she notices the absence. She makes 2 circles with the fingers of both hands and places those circles around her eyes, with her head tilted to one side, as the mere Urbans do when they are puzzled. I know, Roger does the cerulean equivalent of muttering as he slogs through the thick gravity to his shelter and retrieves the hood and goggles. Now fully dressed, Roger is able to return Peregrine's greeting. Did you sleep well? Peregrine asks as Roger removes gel fruit from a container in slow motion. I slept very well, Roger replies wryly. It was getting up that was unpleasant. Peregrine tilts her head back and the goggle report the sounds of amusement. She steps up to help Roger with the container lid. The first 3 days in gravity are the worst, she tells Roger. It will get better. Yes, and just in time for me to return to 0G, Roger retorts crossly. Oh, we aren't leaving that much sooner, she reassures Roger. She watches as he morosely consumes his breakfast. Are you sorry you came? What? Oh, no. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be unpleasant, Roger says. It's just that I was so looking forward to getting off that confining freighter. Now that I'm here, everything is so different. Yes, Isn't that why you came? To see something different? Yes, Roger admits despondently. I guess it's more than I bargained for. You're still tired, Peregrine consoles him. Once you've had a day or two in the open air, your spirit of adventure will return to you. Yes, Roger agrees, mustering his courage. I'm sure it will. He finishes his breakfast with renewed enthusiasm. So, he says, relaxing a bit, what happened? Why are we in such a hurry? Peregrine's features cloud briefly. The Iredians have established a base on Kryptos. They evidently intend to use it to intercept raiders from Xenos much sooner. Are you afraid they will find the treasures before we do? Peregrine compresses her mouth closed and looks down. Yes and no, she says finally. It's not that I fear the Iredians won't return the treasures to their homeworlds. I'm sure they would. It's what else they might find. What they might awaken. Awaken? Peregrine looks off into the distance for a moment before answering. I fear an evil presence on Kryptos, Roger. Don't ask me why, because I can't say. My hope and expectation is that as a small group of people, we can go in and quietly retrieve the treasures before the presence even notices us. The Iredians will not do so quietly, and they will get noticed. How do we know the Iredians haven't already found the treasures and awakened this presence? We don't, Peregrine admits, but their base is located as far from where I think the treasures are as it can be. Our best hope is that they focus on the Xenos raiders and not decide to go exploring. What will happen if this presence is awakened? I honestly don't know for certain, Peregrine admits again, but I fear a great calamity. Well, haven't you been favorable winds and calm seas this morning? Roger observes sardonically. I'm feeling so much better. Peregrine looks him in the eye. I know, my friend, I'm sorry. I thought it best to tell you why you still have a chance to return to water. I can arrange to have you transported to a real spaceport where you can book a passage back on a comfortable passenger vessel if this news sours you on the adventure. But please believe me when I say that I need your help. I fear for our success without you. Roger stewed on this a minute or two before responding. I suppose I've come this far, he says finally. And it would be important to retrieve the original existence. Of course I'll help you. Thank you, my friend. Peregrine's relief is obvious. Now to more pleasant topics, Roger says wryly. How do I avoid being eaten by strikes? I wouldn't venture out in the grasslands until I had my strength back, Peregrine says, answering a question Roger hadn't asked. No, I wasn't planning to, Roger replies, but I hope to in a day or two. How may I protect myself? First Officer Burrowson said something about weapons. Yes, Peregrine nods. I suppose there is some wisdom in acquainting you with it before you actually need it. Give me a moment. Roger watches as Peregrine re-enters her shelter and emerges with a long, narrow box with straps. My thinking, Peregrine says as she shows Roger the box, is that you can strap this to one of your upper forearms. Roger takes the device and begins to do so as Peregrine suggested. Oh, wait, Peregrine takes the box and turns it 180 degrees. Strap it on so that these buttons are nearest to your body. Roger notes the 3 buttons. The furthest away is green, the closest one is red, the one in between is yellow. The green one activates the unit, Peregrine says as she presses it. The button now glowed. The yellow one activates the laser sight. She presses that one and guides Roger's arm to point at a large stone in the periphery of the clearing. A red dot appears on the stone. Now, Peregrine stands and extends one of her arms to demonstrate. Point that light at your target. That stone should do nicely. Good. When you are ready, you press the red button to discharge the weapon. Roger, who senses a light vibration from the weapon, does as Peregrine instructs. The stone shatters. Peregrine quickly examines the weapon. That was the highest setting, she says. More than enough to kill a strike. It will take a minute for the weapon to recharge. She shows Roger a dial on the end closer to him. If you turn it down, to say half or less, The discharge will be strong enough to at least discourage a strike, but leave you enough energy for multiple shots. The red button flashes, then begins to burn steadily. There, Peregrine notes, it is recharged. Now turn it off, as you are not going to use it. Roger complies and unstraps the weapon. It uses the same charger as your tablet there, Peregrine informs him. Any questions? Do the others have one of these? Yes, but adapted to their anatomies. Why do I have a feeling that these are not only for defense against strikes? You're as astute as ever, my friend, Peregrine says, nodding. I fear we will need them on Kryptos as well. So much to look forward to, Roger notes grimly. So that is the end of Chapter 8. Chapter 9 is River of Glass. Thanks for listening. Oh, and by the way, these recordings are available on YouTube. Just search Menace in the Goldilocks Zone, and you'll find all the recordings. Thanks again.